Somebody's going to challenge you, and you're going to lean into your business card and say, because I said so. Maybe not in so many words, but your response will have that kind of flavor to it. Dead on arrival. Right then, you're dead on arrival because you're being a hypocrite. You've expected them to behave a certain way, and you're not doing it.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Revenue Problem Solvers podcast, where we try to crack the code on growing your business by tackling the challenges that keep revenue leaders up at night. I'm Carl Ortmans, and on today's episode, we're going to dive into a topic we actually haven't talked about yet, and that's the topic of operations and revenue. Now, today's podcast is sponsored by the great team at Virtual Causeway. Traditional demand gen has broken for a lot of teams that we talk to on the Revenue Problem Solvers podcast. And Virtual Causeway will help you fix that by shifting from demand generation to demand positioning. Instead of chasing form fills, they engineer where and how your brand appears when buyers research through AI tools and even through peer networks. The result is fewer cold motions, more high intent conversations, and revenue teams actually spending time with people who want to buy. Check them out at virtualcauseway.com, and don't forget to mention the show for a special rate. Now, my guest today is a leadership author, a former Fortune 10 executive, and a keynote speaker, best known for creating the 10 W's leadership framework, Kyle McDowell. Kyle spent nearly 3 decades inside large organizations, leading teams and running complex operations. And during that time, he noticed something that most leaders quietly experience but rarely talk about. Almost every company says culture matters. They put their values on the wall, integrity, teamwork, excellence. But when the pressure hits, when deadlines pile up, and when performance is on the line, those values often disappear. And Kyle saw that pattern over and over during his more than 20 years at United Health Group, one of the largest companies in the world, where he led large teams and saw firsthand how culture either shows up in behavior or it doesn't exist at all. So he started experimenting with something different. Instead of vague corporate values, he created a set of very clear behavioral commitments for his teams, simple standards of how people would operate and how they would hold each other accountable. He called them the 10 W's. That framework eventually became the foundation for his book, Begin with We, 10 Principles for Building and Sustaining a Culture of Excellence. And today, Kyle works with leaders around the world, helping them build cultures that actually shape how teams perform. Kyle, welcome to the podcast, sir. Thank you for joining.
Hey, Carl. Man, it's great to be here. Thank you for such a wonderful introduction, too. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure to get to know you so far, and I'm pumped for today. So as we get kicked off, could you give us a little bit, give us all a little bit of context about your world? What industries or verticals do you work with? What are your selling motions? What size companies do you work with?
So I grew up in the corporate space, and you mentioned a couple of stops, but I spent the bulk of my career in healthcare. All of my career in operations. So, for example, in my last role before leaving the corporate world, I led the back office operations for about 15,000 employees at a massive pharmaceutical, probably Fortune 10 firm, $50+ billion P&L. Prior to that, I ran operations for the Affordable Care Act and 1-800 Medicare, 2 of the largest entitlement programs in the States. Had about 14,000 employees there. But today, I work with organizations of all size, of all industries. It's pretty agnostic, and I think that's probably a commentary to the work that I do. Is I don't care if it's healthcare, if it's financial services, automotive. You pick the industry. At the end of the day, we're talking about people. And we're talking about leading people. So while I spent most of my career in kind of mostly the healthcare space, whether it was healthcare or any other field you can imagine, I don't think it matters because we're just talking about people at the end of the day. So I don't rule out any type of engagement or operation or working with somebody just because of it's an industry different than where I grew up, but because I found the challenges to be the same. Sure, there are nuances and there are isms that are, kind of requisite for each industry or every different industry. But, as I said, at the end of the day, we're just talking about leading people.
I like how you said that. You lead people. You manage metrics. You lead people. You don't manage people. So I like that. How we got to today's topic is very similar to the same question. It is the same question I ask everybody. What's a successful revenue initiative you've ever led or an existing challenge that you're either solving or have solved? And Kyle and I had a really good back and forth, and it became clear that it was improving operations to increase revenue. So if we can maybe just jump off here, Kyle, a lot of leaders think revenue problems are actually sales problems. But in your experience, how often are revenue problems actually operational problems inside the organization?
Man, I'm having flashbacks. I remember so vividly. So I'll give you some inside baseball in the health plan space. So every year, the sales team would go out to different markets and they try to sign up big employers, right? So they try to sign up the companies that will use us for their insurance, for their employer insurance deals, and invariably, it seemed anyway, as from the ops perspective, every deal was sold as a bespoke arrangement or agreement that one size fit one.
Hmm.
From an operations perspective, that's bad, right? We want
Right.
repeatable, standardized processes that we can drop in any geography with any set of circumstances, and they're going to work. It's like the McDonald's thing, regardless of what city you're in. Theoretically, your McDonald's experience should be exactly the same. And that's how operators roll. We want consistency, predictability. We want to be able to track things at a very minute level. But invariably, what would happen every single year is our sales team would go out and they would sell a deal that we would have to modify some operation or some step behind the scenes. So what happens is you have a sales environment or sales org rather that goes to sell a deal that's not standard, that requires changes to be made inside the operations behind the curtain. And if you do it well, it's kind of like when you come home and your lights are on, right? You don't call the power company to say thank you. You just expect it to work. However, when it doesn't go well, you're picking up the phone. And in this environment, that's what tended to happen every single year. We'd sell a deal, gets handed over to the operations guys for execution. Either some requirements were not appropriately or accurately captured, or whatever the scenario is, but invariably there would be some kind of disconnect. We would deploy something or kick off this operations for this new client or the revised expectations for this client, and it wouldn't always go well. Where I'm going with all this though is the operations are the execution of what we've already sold. And we could sell everything. We could have the sexiest PowerPoints and sales slicks and marketing docs that you've ever seen. But if we can't execute behind the scenes, there is no revenue. And this is where, especially in larger organizations, we get this kind of finger pointing back and forth. Well, I sold this, where you executed this, or you implemented this, and I said this, but you implemented that, which I think puts an absolute emphasis on this need for clear standards, not just for behavior, like you talked about, which is incredibly important, but for how we do what we do, establishing very clear expectations. Hopefully they're observable, they can be reported against, and we can establish a baseline for always, trying to improve. But here's where I think operations nerds like me have an opportunity to increase revenue rather than just deliver on what was sold. And it boils down to this. I couldn't be more adamant that if we're high functioning behind the scenes, take care of each other, we look out for each other, we hold each other accountable. A lot of the things that you said during the introduction, our customers feel that. They feel it. And in most cases, it keeps them satisfied with where we are in terms of our business relationship, but often it results in an increase in revenue and opportunity. The opposite is also true, man. When we're dysfunctional behind the scenes, when our handoffs are broken, we don't have clearly established SLAs behind the scenes, and we're dysfunctional or even toxic behind the scenes, our customers feel that as well. We've all experienced that as a consumer. We try to call a company that something's gone off the rails and it has to get sent to another department, but I'll circle back, and invariably the call never comes. You don't ever get that follow-up as promised. And that sign of dysfunction is almost always felt by the end user, the consumer. So, being a behind the scenes operations guy leading big organizations, I always tried to lean really hard into how high functioning are we behind the scenes? Are we a team, or are we a bunch of people with the same badge? Because if we're just a bunch of people with the same badge, there's no team. And it's likely that we're not performing as optimally or as high functioning as we could or should. So it's our responsibility on the operations side to deliver an experience that is consistent with what's been sold. And when we do that, we're already a leg up versus our competition because we've made good on a commitment. And that's critical. We always judge those that we buy a product or service from on their ability to deliver. So there's historically in a lot of organizations been this kind of like church and state. We've got the sales team, or maybe a separate marketing team, or maybe they're combined, and then you got the guys and gals that actually do the work on the operations side. And if they're not connected, we're off to a bad start. But when they are connected, and if communication is solid and explicit, and who knows, and everybody knows the task, the mission, what we're trying to accomplish and deliver for this client, we're more likely to perform in a way that delivers to their expectations. Mm-hmm. So I don't like separating sales from operations. I know it's natural in a lot of environments, but one cannot exist without the other.
There's a question in here, and I'm glad you called it out, because and hopefully we can take this path. There is an expectation for businesses that you have to go and build new business, right? Like your lifeblood is majority of the time is on finding new verticals, finding new business, finding new ways. So there is that exploration phase. But then there's also the repeatability, like you talked about, that operational rigor, that we're going to do what we said we're going to do, right? Because that ultimately, when you sell that opportunity, now it's up to the operations team to deliver. And you can pick the vertical, whichever you want to be. And I immediately think of manufacturing in this example, right? And I know it's not healthcare, but hopefully you kind of follow me on it. Mm-hmm. We're going to sell a thing that's going to do an output. Great. Operations, make it so, right? And there's a number of
those too.
Yeah, like there's a bunch of standard operating procedures and everything that goes through it. But there's a push-pull, because there's a push of like, I got to go find some new business, but then the pull is going to be, well, that's not exactly how we want to do this.
Yeah.
And so there's a couple of questions, I think, rooted under this topic, and hopefully you can stay with me while we're going. So the first question is it the first thing you should be thinking about when you go to do something new? So let's say something new, because you talked about, like, hey, we went and we sold a thing, now we got to deliver the thing. In a large company, when you have that sale, you're now going on repeatability. When something breaks that is outside the mold of what you've done, how do you go to the sales team and say, you know what, this is how this is supposed to go, but hey, just so you know, you did it like this. That means this is the chain of command that happens, and this is the impact to the sales team. How does that conversation happen?
Well, as odd as it sounds, that conversation has to happen before that issue has surfaced. Mm. And this is where I go back to the value of being explicit around expectations. So in most environments, we'll have like an intake form, and it checks all the boxes that says, here are the steps or the things that we're going to execute on behalf of the organization, the thing that was just sold. And it's not uncommon for something to fall outside or not even be in scope of what we have identified as those key things that go into this intake form. So where I'm going here, though, is if we wait until something is off the rails to drive improvement, we're already behind the 8 ball. Mm-hmm. So we have to establish the expectations, including like walking through what if scenarios. If this happens, what do we do? What if? How do we respond? Those types of things. It places an overt emphasis on the need for connectivity of leaders across functional areas, and that's where I spend a lot of time talking about shared standards, shared observable behavioral standards. They can't just be for one function. They can't just be for the operations guys and gals. It has to be for every functional area of the company. So, for example, we own our mistakes is we number 6 of the 10 we's. We number 5. We own our mistakes, which is a beautiful thing, right? When someone says we blew it, we have an opportunity to be better. Let's fix this problem instead of just hiding shit, which happens too often. We now know what needs to be addressed, and this is something we want to aim to improve. But if we're the only ones living with that paradigm, and I approach the sales leader or someone in the sales team to say, listen, man, we have a repeatable process over here. You sold something that's outside of that scope, and it's causing this downstream series of impacts. I'd like to approach that with the understanding that the person on the other end of the line or across the table from me is subscribed to the same series of those behaviors, and that's we own our mistakes. So they'll say, man, Kyle, yeah, you're right. Yeah, we blew that. Or if they're not quite ready to kind of get to that conclusion, there's another principle that's we challenge each other. So let's pretend for this moment, for this scenario, that salesperson disagrees. They think they've handed over everything needed for us to execute flawlessly. Well, at that point, it's my time to kind of shift the conversation. It's like, hey, Carl, well, we challenge each other, right? And if you've subscribed to these principles, and they're in part of the overall organization, as part of the overall organization, everybody subscribed to them. We're now speaking from the same vernacular. We have the same expectations of one another. By the way, we challenge each other is followed by we embrace challenge. So there's an obligation on the receiving part, for the receiving party, to acknowledge that this is a challenge that's coming my way. I need to embrace that. That's how we operate here. So the point of this of my response is this, Carl. It's like, if we wait till something's not going well, there's going to be defensiveness. There's going to be territorialness. There's going to be this sandbox. You feel like you're intruding on someone else's territory. On the flip side, if we go back early, and it's like the day that person joined the company, or the day that I joined the company, or the day that we kicked off this initiative, we level set on those same observable behaviors, that those are our true north, for lack of a better cliche. It makes having those difficult sideways conversations a little bit easier, because I'm not coming at you with my opinion. I'm not being difficult with you for the sake of being difficult. I'm going to challenge you because that's who we are. That's what we all have subscribed to. And it's my opinion at this point that what you've handed us, kind of like the bill of sale, if you will, for us to execute on the operations side, was missing something or incomplete, not exactly what we needed. I need you to embrace that challenge. And oh, by the way, we pick each other up. So regardless of how this mistake was made or how we got to where we are, this downstream impact that we're feeling, just know that I'm in this with you, not aside from you, not coming at you. I'm going to pick each other up. We're going to pick each other up, and that's how we're going to get out of this. The long-winded or less long-winded way of answering this is, we've got to align on expectations for every functional area, regardless of your role, your seniority, your tenure, how important you might think you are. Because when we're aligned on what the expectations for how we behave, when things are bad, we know where to go. We know what to lean into. We know what principles we have. We know what drives us, which, by the way, makes when things are going well that much more fun.
Oh yeah. Yeah, winning solves all. And there's one of the things that I heard that I'm going through my mind is you talking about this is like I call it chasing shiny things. Well, we did a thing, and I worked with a group where it was like, hey, I see a great opportunity over there. There's a great account. What are they doing to use our stuff? We'll never do that again. Wait, what do you mean? Oh, that's hard coded. It's this, it's that. We'll never do that project again. Oh. How come we got that? Well, it was for this specific project, and it was this specific thing. We have a specific team related to that. Okay, so repeatability, 0. Got it. What about this one over here? We're never doing that thing again. Don't ever ask about it. Well, how come? Well, it's for this project in specific. And so you go, okay, there are more exceptions to the rules than there are rules.
Yeah.
So how do you make sure that you stay on top of it? And that was one of the things I'm like, well, how do you look at that? Because from a go-to-market perspective, if you're always doing different things, but they're never repeatable, well, then who's your target market and how do you address it?
Right.
But the flip side of it is, if you start to look at it and go, you know what? We're not just chasing shiny things. We actually ventured into a new vertical that we never expected to. We followed our standard operating procedures, but we have to tweak it because it's medical devices as an example, and it needs to have very specific cleanliness, and it's got to follow some HIPAA rule, blah blah blah. Okay, we can adapt our standard operating procedures to go into a new vertical. And so it comes, I think there's a question inside of here of like, when you've gone through this from that operational rigor and you build those things, how often do you have to go back to the standard operating procedures or those SLAs and say, you know what, for sake of conversation, hey, Carl, you sold this thing over here. You know what? It adapts our standard operating procedures and our operational. So as much as you want to say it's delivered in 10 weeks, I'm just making an example. Yeah. We actually need 14 weeks. And that's got to be communicated to the customer. Let's build a plan together to communicate that, because it's something we've not done before. How do you have those conversations around entering it with looking at the operations and making an adjustment for repeatability, not just one-offs?
There's great question. And I think there are 2 layers that should be considered. One is, how do we handle that variability with the sales team, or the person, the individual who has brought us that deal, which is obviously incredibly important because we want the deals to be as standard as an operations guy. We want those deals to be as standard as possible for execution's sake. And I'll come back to that. On the other side of that coin, though, is the requirement or obligation of the leader to get their team on board with this non-standard approach. Because that's we like predictability, all of us, whether you're a leader or whether you're a person on the front line with fingers on keyboards. And when that predictability is upset or off kilter, errors become more prominent. People are left to guess rather than they have a black and white SOP that they've followed for weeks, months, or years. So part of our job as the leader on the operations side is to be that kind of change agent to remind people that this is our lifeblood. Like, you may not like this, and you may not like these non-standard approaches. It's our responsibility to create a template or some type of intake form, or create at least the relationship so the people on the sales side recognize how important or how complex some of these seemingly small changes or differences might be. That's incredibly important, but it's our obligation to bring our team along in a way that reminds them that we're not going to settle for mediocrity. And if standard is the recipe that you're most comfortable with, this may not be the right place for you. Because if we're not stretching, being innovative, trying different approaches, not just to what we sell, but how we operate, to your scenario, a brand new vertical, like, we're here because we're needed. And I think that's often overlooked or not even discussed. It's like, if it were easy, none of us would be in this role. So it's called work. There's going to be some tough things that we have to overcome, but if we're aligned on how we overcome them, it makes the challenges much less difficult to navigate. Now, if it becomes, then there's a broader organizational kind of rub that needs to be considered. If there are more exceptions to the rule than there are rules, then that's probably something that should be explored, right? But it also, to your point, provides us data, provides us opportunities to learn from, is this change adding the value that we hope, are we spending more man hours or woman hours on this that makes, although this shiny object that we just signed with this mountains of revenue behind it, well, maybe it's costing us more to actually do that work. Right. So the more standard we can become just on the intake side in establishing the new baselines, the KPIs and SLAs that come with that new relationship or that new engagement, we now have a jumping off point. We have a baseline to use for maybe future similar deals, or maybe this one on its own. We have a baseline to start gauging progress and improvement on. There was a specific component of your question of how often do we go back and look at those things. And that's situational. I don't really have a great answer for that, but I will tell you when it's not the right time. It's not the right time to only do it when something breaks. And I've been in some really, really mature organizations that have like these monthly kind of like get well meetings. They all usually have their own branding or some kind of inspiring term behind it. But the spirit of these meetings is to unpack the gnarly scenarios that surfaced over the course of the last month, identify what went wrong, why it went wrong. Maybe it was just something as simple as communication, which sounds simple, but isn't easy. Or maybe it was just the way something was documented, also sounds simple, but not necessarily easy. I would just encourage your audience, if you feel like you are being disciplined and rigorous enough in exploring, double checking, triple checking the outcomes and intentions that you expected to see for whatever initiative we're talking about, it has to be done with some rigor, consistency, and scheduling. So, for example, if we wait for something to be broken, well, now our hair's on fire. We've lost a lot of subjectivity, or objectivity rather, and we're focused on putting this fire out rather than improving. But if we approach these things on a more consistent, scheduled basis, not when the house is on fire, we have an opportunity to more objectively see like what the problem is and where the right solution might be found.
And it's a good way of staying connected with both sides, because operations can get you out of trouble, right? Like, it can go, hey, Kyle, I got this one. It's a little bit different, or you know what, hey, can you get this delivered, or can we put a great team on it? There's a communication, right? Like, hey, look, operations can make you go real fast. At the same time, you can make operations go real slow for you. And there is a rub, there's a push and pull, because like you said, I like how you said it is, you're delivering the outcome of the thing that was promised. And so, and it comes back to you. And now it's having that unification. I'll say that word of like,
Love it.
hey, we go to the customer. This is what we said we're going to do. This is what the operations team said we were going to do. Like, this is how we're going to deliver. Here's the thing though. What we mentioned, we're a little bit backed up. We have this or whatever the challenge is. But I think there's going into those conversations, in my experience, of having that both sides come to the table and say, look, we're here to make this work. We're going to need either this, or we're going to need a little bit of time, or we need to tweak something a little bit different because, and then it's hey, we missed a step.
Yeah.
And I'll just say we, because ultimately we as the company try to support the end customer. So I like how you said that, of making sure that you're connected because it's important. Operations are the things that can turn you quickly.
Yeah.
And you have to have some exploration, but looking at those SOPs and that continuous innovation. I've had the experience of going through with automation and manufacturing, but going through that Kaizen method of mindset.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's something you and your teams have had to do in the past.
Absolutely. Yes.
So the Kaizen side, which I did like, and I brought it into software, was using that red, yellow, or the red, green.
Mm-hmm.
And it was that daily visual management. Is something on track? Is it off track? And so maybe my question to you is, when you've led these large teams, what's your method, or how do you make sure that you know that everything is operational to the exact where you want to? And if something's off track, how do you identify so you dig in and fix it?
Yeah. That's the operators, we're often asked the question, what keeps you up at night? For me, it was always the things that I don't know. And that sounds kind of obvious maybe, but most good operator, I would say every good operator, they have the encyclopedia, or maybe better yet, the Bible of reports. So there's a dashboard, right? And there's usually a layer underneath that dashboard. It allows you to drill down. In the most of mature organizations, sometimes it's a little bit of chewing gum and duct tape, and I get that. But the point is, we make most of our decisions based on data. Obviously feelings or emotions play a role. We're human, but having a robust data set to say what's going well, what's not going well, is this having the intended outcomes or impact we're expecting to see or not? But I'll say I actually approach it a little bit differently maybe than most. I like to remind people. So let's pretend, Carl, you're in the sales organization. You brought us a new deal, and you and I are peers, and we've had a discovery session, and we figured out how we're going to go operationalize this. So whether it's that scenario or any other transformation or change initiative or new thing, I like to first remind people what's not changing. And that might be secondary to the way most people approach it. But here's my point. In the face of so much change, all the way to like the downright transformation, you have to think about, especially in a larger organization, we have to think about every layer of the organization that has fingers or anything to do with this transformation, this change. And because the more senior people in the organization understand the path that we're taking, the reason for this change, why we're doing what we're doing, why we signed this new client with these really out of scope requirements, people are left to guess. And they're left to guess what matters most. Who do I go to for what? What matters most around here? What's happening to our culture? What's changing as a result of this new transformation or this new client or this new implementation? So I like to lead with, here's what's not changing. How we behave, not changing. What we hold dear, not changing. The principles, that in my case, the 10 W's, the observable behaviors that we hold each other accountable to and hold ourselves accountable to, not changing. Where you go, not changing. Of course, unless there's some organizational component, right, that's in scope. But my point here is the more outspoken and conspicuous we can be on the non-negotiables, the things that no matter what we do, once you put this badge on, no matter what we do, nothing is changing in terms of how we treat each other, our behavioral expectations, accountability, ownership, the things that make us us. Doesn't matter who's here, who's around us, what transformation we're taking on, what new client, those things are not changing. And that in itself, I think, promotes a bit of stability in the face of what feels like radical change. And of course,
Mm-hmm.
it depends again on the size of the transformation or the implementation we're talking about. But unless we're conspicuous about those expectations, we get caught up in this flavor of the day, this new shiny object you talked about. We start making decisions that are not consistent with our values or our principles. Like, we're going to cut this corner because the client doesn't quite care. They don't care quite as much about this one requirement as maybe another does. Or, maybe we're going to cut our cycle time for QA down, or, whatever the corner cut might be, or the lack of focus of details. Number 10 is we obsess over details. Whatever shortcuts those however they might be represented or manifest. When the leader steps out front to say, that's not who we are, I know this is big change and it might be uncomfortable, and I'm going to share with you how uncomfortable I am with the change, because I'm going to be relatable and be human about it. I'm not going to stand on stage and tell you we shouldn't be nervous. I'll tell you we are nervous if I am. When we over-index on our expectations of what's not changing, it allows the things that are changing to be a little more palatable.
Which makes sense. Which now leads me to the question of the things that can change and the things that aren't changing. We kind of centered this conversation around operations and increasing revenue. So with everything we've kind of talked about of setting it up, like there's daily visual management, there's communication, there's I like you said, the things that aren't, what's not changing, and looking at it like, when's the right time to dig into it, and when's the time to fix something. Well, it's not when things are broken. Let's stay proactive. So on that proactivity, how do you talk to clients about how operations can actually help them improve their revenue? What's that conversation sound like?
Execution, my man.
Okay.
I boil it down to one word, right? So what can the operations crew do to either maintain or hopefully increase and drive incremental additional revenue? We got to execute on the things that are right in front of us. Yeah, there's a shiny deal around the corner that would drive all kinds of increased revenue and be in the space we want to be, or the logo that we want to have on our list of clients. But if we can't execute what's right in front of us, none of that matters. And I used to be this guy that was just maniacally focused on results, like bang my fist on the desk. This is the target we set. We're going to hit this come hell or high water, no excuses. And it worked for a lot of years. But my transformation for me personally has been to change my approach to gone are the days, for me at least, focusing exclusively on the results, but more appropriately, and I think impactfully, focusing on the people that deliver the results. So if the operation is, let's be honest, and I'm used to this throughout most of my career, operations they're cost centers, right? They're not driving incremental revenue unless there's a cross sale opportunity or something that's inherent in the relationship that we have with our customers. So if we recognize that from the outset, that we are a cost driver, then and we're not shy about it, like we're not biased or bitter about it, I think that creates a paradigm that we need to show our value. We need to add value, maybe not monetarily in terms of increased revenue, but that usually works itself out in the form of repeat business. Word of mouth marketing to other prospects, that these are the guys and gals that you want to work with because they're easy to do business with, and they make good on their commitments. We number three, we say what we're going to do and then we do it. So we can approach our role as a leader inside the operations as we're just a cost center and we're here to fulfill orders and kind of check boxes, or we can recognize that the execution for which we are responsible is absolutely a gateway to more and increased revenue. I think the paradigm, if a leader establishes that, it doesn't end there. So when we communicate the value that we're trying to add as an operations unit and what that means for all of us, more business, more opportunities, not just for the company, right? So if the operations group is expanding because of this new business or our entry into another vertical that's going to drive incremental business, we're going to need new leaders. We're going to need more people to do this, to do what I do. We're going to need at all layers. We're all going to benefit. So look, at the end of the day, I boil it to this, man. Every single one of us wants three things. It's like ABCs. We want to add value. That's the A. We want to be valued. And that's just clearly being recognized for a job well done. Could be a promotion, could be money, could be any number of things. We want to be recognized for that value. And lastly, the C is, if we're really lucky, we can connect the value that we've delivered to those that benefit from it, the consumer at the end of the day. And not every environment affords that, especially in the operations world. Oftentimes we're processing widgets and we don't get to see the awe or the impact that it's having. That's where it's the leader's responsibility to communicate and share and make sure that connection is being made. But when it's made, Carl, when that connection is made, the value that I'm adding and how that layers up, not just to the organizational goals, but it also puts me in a position to take on more, do more, get promoted, maybe leave this organization, believe it or not, to go work somewhere else because I've shown that I have that capability. People are more committed. They're more committed to the cause. So if we want our operations groups, the people behind the scenes, to be not just care, but actually have a sense of ownership about driving incremental revenue, it's irrefutable that it plays itself out in terms of higher output, more optimal outcomes, a better product or service that we offer, because now people can connect it to something bigger than just what the boss has told them to do.
I like the ABCs: add value, be recognized, connect the value. I think that I like that, because that and the execution are inherent in what I'm hearing is they're inherently linked. If your ABCs are connected to execution, then the output is what you're expecting.
Yes. Well said. Right on.
Which is great. So on the conversation of adding value. So I know you talk to lots of leaders about this. When you say to them, you got to add value, and they go, Kyle, what do you mean?
What is that?
How do I add value?
Yeah.
What do you tell them?
Well, it's different for every role.
Okay.
So if you have direct reports, if you're a leader in the organization, in my mind, you really have one stream of value to add, and that's development and growth of those that you lead. And that might sound a little woo-woo or a little cliche for some, but here's the truth. When people we lead are able to connect the value that they theoretically bring to the workplace every single day, they don't work less hard. They move from compliance to commitment. So I try to create what's called a culture of excellence. It's not perfection. It is the vibe or the energy inside of an organization, but there's an ethos there that I've defined, at least inside of what I call a culture of excellence. And it's the aligned pursuit of individual and organizational goals. There's more to it than that, but I'm breaking it down to like this one sentence. When a leader and members of their team are aligned on the individual's goals, you want to get promoted, you want to take on more, maybe you want my job, maybe you want to leave this organization and go take on something else. Maybe you're just here for a short period of time to stack enough cash to start your own side hustle, whatever it is. The more I can be, as your leader, the more I'm aware of what motivates you, inspires you. And by the way, I'm not naive. Some people want to show up, collect a paycheck, and go home. No problem with that as well. That's good on you. I have no issue with that. But if I know what motivates and inspires you other than that paycheck, why do you come to work? We all have to, if you have a badge, if you're showing up at a job, it's most likely safe to say you're not independently wealthy. We have bills, we have commitments, things we got to do, right? Mm-hmm. But that aside, because that's table stakes, right? Everybody comes to work primarily for income. Let's get that out of the way. So you're not unique because that's why you're here. But when we connect on the things that inspire you, motivate you, and that drive you to do what you do beyond that paycheck, we unlock a level of ownership and commitment that is not there otherwise. So my point here, Carl, is we can talk all day about KPIs and goals and metrics and SOPs and whatever acronym you want to throw out there. At the end of the day, nobody really cares about those things unless they see what's in it for them. Mm-hmm. It's true. In today's workplace, there are more opportunities and options for people than ever before, with work at home being what it is. The gig economy. We're no longer confined to a zip code. You and I are having this conversation from different countries. Yeah. So people have opportunities to go anywhere, do just about anything they want to do if they put their mind to it. So while we have them in the organization that we're in, leading the team that we lead, it's an obligation to help them on their path. And when you show interest in what they want to do next, and I don't know, maybe even help them get to that next stop, even if it means them leaving your team, do you think they work less hard? Mm-hmm. Of course not. Once they see that their leader is invested in their growth, not just in what that person can do for them or for the team, there's a connection that is much more authentic, much more genuine, and lasts much longer than the tenure of the role that you're in. Carl, I still have one-on-ones with people I haven't worked with in over a decade.
Really?
True. Yeah, it's true, man, because they know I care about them and their growth and their development, what's next for them. They bounce ideas off me. And likewise, I've started work on my second book, and my group of confidants that I used to have one-on-ones with because they reported to me.
Yeah.
They're still my confidants. Just because we don't have the same badges any longer doesn't mean I don't value their input. So it's something that once you find that space, dude, I'm telling you, the loyalty that comes from that and the connections that are made and the value that you're able to help them deliver. And oh, by the way, they help you deliver, is a profound thing to be a part of.
It's amazing. I actually, not to say me too, there's a little bit of I actually have a handful of people that I maintain one-on-ones with on a regular basis. And I say regular, like monthly. Hey, I want to talk to you about this, or I just want to be able to jump onto that, or hey, whatever it is. But we have a regular cadence that's set up, and it's not. They don't report to me. We don't at the same time as I'm helping. My belief is that I'm helping them grow in some aspect, right? I like to say you can't buy experience, but you can learn from experience.
You can learn from a lot of bad mistakes that I've made, or I want to learn from the ones that you've made. It's part of the human experience, man. And you can be, and I was this guy, I should admit, in my 30 years in the corporate world, the first 20 was a very different Kyle than the one you're speaking to today. I'd like to think deep inside I was pretty much the same guy, but how I conducted myself as a leader, the way I approached my teams, the way I demanded results has changed dramatically. And I'll tell you the level of, so I'm with some degree of arrogance, I was always the guy that delivered, right? You would never question if you put Kyle on something, was it going to get done or not? It was going to get done. Right. The question probably was, how was it getting done? Is it in the most ethical way? Is it the most uplifting and positive way? And what impact is it having on those around him was probably the better set of questions to ask. But I point this out because from that first 20 years, the number of people that I'm left with that I still have those genuine connections with pales in comparison to the last 10. So I mentioned that I still have these one-on-ones. I won't exaggerate. There's 6 or 7 people that I still have those types of consistent interactions with. 4 or 5 of them were from the last decade, where the math would say that doesn't make sense. The first 20 years, you should have more than the last 10 years. It didn't work that way for me because I changed how I approached my leadership game, chasing connection, not just results. And when you have the connection, the results come.
And I would be willing to bet that it's also a changing of the times too, because for me, when I entering the workforce and my first managers that I ever had, the way that they spoke to me is very different than how we're spoken to today.
Yeah. And to be honest, brother, that's why I'm not quite as hard on myself as I maybe should be, because I was simply a product of the environment in which I was raised, right? I was screamed at by my bosses. I had fists banged on the desk in front of me. I had a leader tell me to change numbers to match numbers that he really, lack of integrity, really shady shit. So I was a product of that. I didn't know any better, right? But that's what still happens. So yes, the environment has changed, and how we approach people has absolutely changed. People have a lower tolerance for environments like that now. So yes, the environment has changed. However, at the end of the day, we're still talking about people and how we motivate and inspire them, and the people being the most important ingredient of the whole leadership equation. That has not changed. So while how we get the results should change, at the end, we just have to remember that we're talking about people. But what happens, which is so insidious inside of most, if not all organizations, has not changed. And it's this notion that for me to be promoted, for me to be endeared by my boss, I need to take on those same shitty leadership traits that I have loathed in him or her for the past number of years. It's a natural human reaction, right? So we see these behaviors in leaders that we just can't get down with, that we just loathe. All of a sudden they've been promoted and now they're responsible for hiring their replacement. So what do? We start to emulate those same shitty behaviors that we just despised. And then this cycle repeats. And until someone steps in the middle of that and says, there's got to be a better way, which is the question that really set me off on the journey that I'm on now. There has to be a better way. And there is.
Yeah.
But until somebody steps in the middle of that cycle and says, I am hell-bent on finding that better way. I may not know what it is for me, but I know I cannot continue to perpetuate this because I'm lacking the fulfillment that we all enter the workforce at our younger selves with a lot of optimism, eagerness. We want to make an impact. We want to add value, do big things. And over time, the machine kind of sucks that out of us. We become kind of more compliant than we are committed to our own growth in our company. So the cycle continues to go on and on and on and on. So while the actual environments have changed, we still find ourselves kind of mirroring shitty behavior in hopes that it provides a better outcome for us, when ultimately all we end up doing is alienate the next round of leaders.
My dad was in HR for his entire, like a chief HR officer, right? Like,
Okay.
And anyways, he told me when I entered the job, like when I entered the working world, he always said to me, he goes, you're going to learn more. And it's very similar to sports. You learn more in a loss than you do in a win, right?
So,
like winning clears all. But he always said, he goes, you're going to learn more from bad leaders than you will from good leaders. And you'll find the things you'll never want to do from those bad leaders. Like, I agree with you, though, is you start to emulate the behaviors of the people that are being promoted. And that doesn't help. Yeah. Well, if I do this thing, because I watched that person do that, then that's going to be me. But I think there's also, like, I like what you said is, and I mean, to me, I've changed as well, right? Like, you start to change your ways and go, you know what? I don't need to do that anymore.
That's right.
That's not what I need to do. I need to be able to do it. And I think the best advice that was given to me is, you don't manage people. You lead people and you manage metrics. That made a change for me.
So true. So true.
So anyways, I'm looking at the time. Holy cow, 46 minutes. Sorry, I said we were going to get you out of here. If we can get into the wrap up, Kyle, because I think I could talk to you for hours. Everybody likes new, nobody likes different. And when you do both at the same time, it can cause friction or uncertainty. So for somebody thinking about leveling up their operational game, or, you know, trying to make sure that they improve their operations to generate more revenue, what are 2 or 3 actionable things that you can tell somebody, hey, on Monday morning, go look or go do these 2 or 3 things, and that will help put you on a path for success?
Man, that's a tough one, Carl, because with all respect, I don't mean to be crass. That implies that there's a hack, or that there's a do this and that will happen. Right. And that's not really the case. It's do this and then do it again, and then do it again, and then do it again. I say our leadership is judged not by our grand proclamations or how we handle a town hall or a staff meeting. Our leadership is determined in those small kind of unseen moments. And I say it's judged every day, but not just every day. It's every interaction. How I behave. Are my words matching the behaviors that I expect out of you? Those types of things. So when we talk about a scenario where I walk in Monday morning and what can I do to start driving change or be the impactful leader that I want to be, I think it starts with setting expectations, like we talked about earlier. It's at a level that I think a lot of leaders are scared to talk about, or at least uncomfortable to talk about, and that is establish the non-negotiables, the clear, observable behavioral standards that are required for us to be excellent. And that was the genesis of the 10 We's, right? I got tired of the corporate Kool-Aid and the malaise that, frankly, the apathy that I was feeling after 20 years into my career. I traded my desire for impact and doing big things just to fit in, to get along, to kind of keep my head down and keep those checks coming, which left me nothing but apathetic, maybe among other things. But my point is when we establish the behavioral expectations for one and all, and they have to start with you, the leader, because the team's watching to see if your words are aligning with your actions or if you're a hypocrite, and nobody's going to follow you if they don't align. So if we're having this conversation on a Thursday or Friday and you've decided, I'm going to find this better way, I'm going to lead differently, I'm going to be the leader I never had, or maybe the leader I always wanted to be, it starts with a lot of self-reflection to say, what's it like to be led by me? Am I making good on my commitments? Are members of my team comfortable sharing bad news with me? Think through. And for me, it worked out this way. I went through a series. This happened in one evening. It was an epiphany evening for me. I replayed decades of really bad experiences with my leaders. They left me feeling less than whole, left me feeling as if I was like a means to an end, like I was an easily replaced billet. And then I juxtaposed those with the handful of leaders that inspired me and continue to inspire me, maybe saw more in me than I saw in myself, or gave me chances or opportunities to do things that maybe I wasn't ready for. And it was through that self-reflection that I realized, and this is the genesis of the 10 We's. It's like, we ain't going to do that. When I go through the group A of those bad leaders, we ain't going to do that. We're not going to be that group that's responsible for, or known for backstabbing and duplicitous. That's not who we are. And then when I replayed the favorable leadership interactions, like, that's who we are. That's what we want to be. And I turned them into 10 sentences that are basically our rules of engagement, how we treat each other, how we show up for one another, not just the leader. But there's got to be this level playing field, no leadership gap, what I call. What's good for me is good for you, and vice versa. So when we have that self-reflection and we land on the things that we hold dear, the things that are most important, for me, it was these 10 We's, 10 principles. You got to share them widely. Be open to pushback. Be transparent about, you're not going to be perfect at this because you just discovered them as well. But I think, guys, if we all rally around these same set of observable behaviors, we're going to be better off. Because if nothing else, we're not guessing about what I, the leader, think. Mm-hmm. You're not left to your own devices to assume what I meant when I said this, because you know what I say is what I mean. What I mean is what I say. All of this is probably easily categorized under one bullet, and that is just establishing expectations as fiercely for behavior as we do for operations. We're very clear on the KPIs, the success metric, how we determine whether or not you're going to keep your job or not. I think we have to index just as hard and just as emphatically on how we do what we do. So, I responded to your question with kind of a cop-out to say that there's not really this Monday morning thing, but when you do that on Monday, you got to come back and do it again Tuesday. There's probably an opportunity for you to exhibit it throughout that day on Monday, and so forth. So when you establish these behavioral expectations, the team is watching to see if you live them. And your best path for getting them to see that is to remind them, like literally remind them, hey, listen, we embrace challenge, right? So I know we got this gnarly thing in front of us, but as you guys know, I told you we're going to embrace challenge. So this is me embracing challenge, like literally saying the words. Because again, people they care less about your words and how your action connects with those words. But when you say it over and over again, and your actions start to support and augment what you're saying, now we have some trust. Now this guy's telling me how he really feels. I'm not left to guess what he's thinking, and am I just a means to an end for him? The categorization of those setting expectations is critical, but none of this happens without a bit of vulnerability, the self-reflection I talked about, and just being open to leading in a different way. So when I give a keynote, I walk through kind of if you've decided to implement the 10 We's in your organization, or just you personally, you want to live these 10 principles. First step after that is be prepared, because it's going to be awkward. It's going to be uncomfortable because you're leading in a way that you never have led before. People are going to question your sincerity. Did you just read some book or maybe listen to Carl's podcast and you think this is a better way? So they're looking to see if it's just as you said, a shiny initiative. And you know this, brother. We start the shiny initiative and we don't go through with it. We're worse off than never having started it.
Yeah.
So I would say, unless you're committed to this long-term change, and it is hard, man. It is hard. You will work harder. You have to work harder, but it becomes more fulfilling and the impact becomes much more obvious. Just be ready. And that's the be prepared part, because it's going to create a different set of needs and circumstances that your teams will have of you, and their expectations of you will change, but you'll be okay with that when you start to see the connections you're making and the results that are coming. Does that make sense, man?
Totally. What I heard, the thing that I take away from that is, do what you say you're going to do. Integrity above all. That's it. If you have those things, people will follow. But if you don't have those things, people are going to question, and then it'll be a challenge.
Yeah, but also I think it's important to not hold yourself to this like perfection or be on a perfection pedestal, if you will. So when you err, by the way, when the leader makes a mistake or the boss flubs up, 9 times out of 10, the team is well aware of it, even if you don't share it.
Right.
They see you floundering, they see the mistake that you've made, and they're actually waiting for you to own it. So my point is once you start to evangelize, this is who we are, this is how we behave, these are the expectations, you're going to make a mistake. Mm-hmm. You're going to react. Like, for example, I talked about we embrace challenge. Somebody's going to challenge you and you're going to lean into your business card and say, because I said so. Maybe not in so many words, but your response will have that kind of flavor to it. Dead on arrival. Right then you're dead on arrival because you're being a hypocrite. You've expected them to behave a certain way and you're not doing it. Unless you can either circle back to that person or group of people and tell them, man, I blew it. I was thinking about how I handled that meeting earlier, that conversation, and you brought up a really important challenge or something that I had not yet considered, and I did not hear you out. I should express curiosity, and I didn't do that. And that's my bad. That's my bad. But I'm comfortable telling you it's my bad because that's who we are. We own our mistakes, right? That level of humanity and relatability goes so far in establishing trust, more so than anything else you could say, probably, then I blew it. So anyway, I want to insert that because once you establish them, you're not going to be perfect about it, adhering to it. It's going to be a challenge over and over again. And people, by the way, I've had this personally, people will challenge you, your approach, your ideas, just because they've been burned in the past and they're skeptical. It's usually not about you. It's about their previous experiences that tells them that you're a fraud. So they're the ones that are really watching for you to drop the ball, for you to fumble and not be consistent with your words and actions. And the more and the quicker you can own those slides and those missteps, the more you will endear yourself to those you lead.
Awesome. This has been so much fun, Kyle. I'm walking away from all kinds of insights, and I've got an entire page of notes. Like, I actually can't write anymore on this page. So thank you for this. I know we got to go. Where can people find you if they want to pay attention or talk to you a little bit more, or even learn more about what you're up to?
Thanks for that opportunity to share. Basically, every social media platform is Kyle McDowell Inc. My website is kylemcdowellinc.com, and you've been really kind to mention the book a few times. It's Begin With We, 10 Principles for Building and Sustaining a Culture of Excellence. It's a Wall Street Journal and USA Today bestseller wherever books are sold. I'd be grateful for you to check that out. And by the way, I share those social media handles not out of vanity's sake, because I don't really care about those things, but I use them to engage. So if members of your audience heard something that maybe inspired them or compelled them to find a better way, I'd love to hear from you. Or maybe you have a question, or maybe you think I'm full of shit. Feel free to reach out and let me know that as well. I just think it's a great communication conduit.
Amazing. This has been a lot of fun, Kyle. And we've gone basically an hour. When I said, hey, you asked me, how long is this going to be? I'm like, yeah, about 45 minutes. So it's been fun. And thank you for all the communication back and forth. Kyle and I have only spoken a couple of times, like preparing. We don't know each other. Like you said, he's in Florida. I'm in Ontario, Canada. But what I can say is genuine. That's the thing I walk away from. You're very genuine with what you say, what you do. And I feel that from across the continent, well, across the countries, I should say. And I really like what you've said is the power of we, and turning it to a team, because everybody's going to do more if you focus on that. So it's been a pleasure to do this with you. And thank you for being able to sit and talk to me about your experience and everything, because it's been awesome.
Well, brother, you're doing really important work with your show, and I'm humbled to be a part of it. So thank you for the opportunity.
Too kind. That's going to wrap up another episode of the Revenue Problem Solvers. Obviously, want to thank Kyle for sharing incredibly invaluable insights. There's some strategies here that you can put into action tomorrow. Remember, success leaves clues, and every revenue problem has a solution. Sometimes you just need the right conversation to find it. Until next time, it's Carl with the Revenue Problems, helping you turn your obstacles into your opportunities. Thank you for spending your time with us today, and we'll see you on the next episode.